Hi, both. Thanks for joining us today on our Business Gurus channel, where we will be discussing key business topics to help students grasp the most important elements of their course in preparation for their exams and future career. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really big challenge for any business, really. How do you keep people motivated when, you can't just throw more money their way? So our mission today is a deep dive into these non-financial motivation strategies,
Hmm.
the kinds of methods that try to change the work itself, turn it from just a task into something, well, more fulfilling.
Exactly. I mean, businesses looking for long-term performance, they pretty quickly find that just using financial incentives, well, it has its limits. Sure, cash gives you a boost, maybe short-term, but the material we've looked at suggests the real drivers, the things that focus on how the job is designed, empowerment, that inner satisfaction, that's what creates real lasting engagement. We're looking at three specific ways companies try to make the actual experience of working, more dynamic, more interesting for you.
Right, and those three are job rotation, job enrichment, and autonomy. They're all basically tools against that big enemy of productivity, which is just plain boredom, right? Intellectual boredom.
hmm And we should really unpack these, not just how they're supposed to work, but critically where they might fall down. Because let's be honest, none of these are free passes. They all come with risks, costs.
Okay, good point. Let's dive into the first one then. Job rotation. So the idea here is basically variety, isn't it? You move employees between different jobs, often related jobs, I guess.
Usually, yeah, to break up that repetition.
It's like the management answer to doing the exact same thing day in, day out. Monotony.
Precisely.
And the upsides seem pretty obvious, quite immediate too. Okay, first, it definitely tackles boredom. That's the psychological win. But from an operational view, it seems great for cross-training. Like you get built-in backup, so if someone's out sick, it's easier to find cover.
Right. That's a major practical benefit, yes.
Plus, for the employee themselves, using more skills must feel better. Makes you feel more versatile, maybe more valuable.
It often does increase motivation for that reason, but here's the interesting part. While the organization gets more flexible, it almost always costs something in terms of specialization. What we see is this trade-off. Efficiency, speed, they can actually drop. And that's a paradox managers really need to grapple with.
Wait a minute. So if you've got higher training costs, because people are always learning new roles, essentially,
Yeah.
and potentially lower output because they're less specialized,
Mhm.
why would a manager choose rotation? Are they just swapping bored, fast workers for, like, motivated but slower ones? Is that the deal?
Well, that frames the core dilemma really well. You choose rotation when the cost of not having that flexibility, maybe the cost of a key specialized role being empty, or the cost of zero cover when someone's off, when that cost outweighs the loss in immediate speed. Think about, say, complex manufacturing or maybe safety critical jobs. Versatility there might be non negotiable.
Okay, so it depends on the context.
Absolutely. But there's another layer. Our source material brings up a pretty significant social point, too. The rotation could just mean you're doing more boring tasks, just different ones in sequence. And maybe worse, if you keep changing teams, you might never build those strong group bonds, that camaraderie.
Ah, so you lose the social
You
glue.
potentially lose some social benefits, yeah. And those are huge motivators in themselves.
Right. So you might fix the individual boredom issue, but risk creating, what, group alienation
hmm
and slowing things down in the process. That does sound like a high price for being flexible.
It can be. It's a definite balancing act.
Okay, so if that's the risk with going broad, spreading skills horizontally with rotation, what about going deeper? Let's shift to the next one, job enrichment. This sounds more intensive. It's not just shuffling tasks around.
No, not at all. Job enrichment is fundamentally redesigning the job itself. You're trying to make it more challenging, yes, but also less repetitive. And crucially, you're giving the employee more control, more say in planning and doing the work. We're really talking about handing over genuine responsibility here.
That sounds like it taps into something deeper psychologically,
Right.
like the need to achieve something, to master a skill. The advantages seem pretty powerful. Focused on real growth, it develops skills maybe people weren't using before. It lets employees actually contribute to decisions about their own work. And that must lead to feeling a real sense of accomplishment, right? You feel like you're actually contributing, not just
Yeah.
doing tasks.
Absolutely. That sense of achievement can be a massive motivator. But when we look at actually implementing this, things get complicated. There are a couple of big hurdles. First, the psychological one you touched on. The goal is to challenge, but for some people, it might just feel like pressure, intense pressure, especially if they were actually comfortable with the old way, the predictability. Not everyone thrives on constant challenge.
That's a fair point. What's the second hurdle?
Cost, again. But a different kind of cost. With enrichment, the training isn't just a quick, here's the new task. It's often deep, complex skills training needed to handle these new, bigger responsibilities. So the payoff, the real benefit, it often only comes long term, after that initial investment pays off.
Okay, so it requires patience and investment. But there's another big limit, isn't there? Something our sources really flagged. It's about the job itself, the actual physical constraints.
Precisely. This is key. Not all jobs can actually be meaningfully enriched, no matter how much you want to or how much money you spend. The source gives a very stark example, a bin man.
Right.
You can try, perhaps, to give them more say in route planning, maybe. But the core job, it's physical collection. It's a fixed route mostly. Safety rules are paramount. You can't realistically give that person strategic input on, say, the city's waste management budget or ownership over the recycling plant's operations. The fundamental nature of the task puts a hard ceiling on how much you can actually enrich it with more responsibility or macro-level decision-making.
Yeah, that example really hits home. It grounds the theory. You could probably enrich a software developer's job almost endlessly with new challenges, new projects. But for jobs tied to physical realities, specific schedules, safety protocols, enrichment could become meaningless. Or even, like you said, dangerous if you push it too far.
Exactly. It highlights the practical boundaries.
Okay, this actually leads us really neatly into the third method, which seems to maximize the thinking part of work: autonomy.
Yes, autonomy. This is about giving employees the power, the discretion to make their own decisions. Decisions about how they do their work and often when they do it. Within certain boundaries, of course. It's really the ultimate expression of trusting your employees.
And the sources gave a great example. Teachers. They often decide when they mark papers, when they prep lessons, when they handle emails, within the school day, obviously, but they manage their own workflow. It respects their professional judgment, doesn't it?
It does. And that's where the benefits come from, that feeling of trust and ownership.
So employees feel much more ownership over their work, which naturally boosts motivation because, well, it's theirs. They get to use their own judgment, their own problem-solving skills, work at a pace that suits them. It moves away from that rigid, one-size-fits-all structure.
But, and there's always a but with these things, this is where that psychological contract can really get tricky. Because autonomy assumes the employee wants to be self-directed. And that's just not universally true, which raises a big question. What happens to the employee who actually doesn't want to be the decision maker?
You mean they might feel lost?
Yes.
Or abandoned even,
Right.
rather than empowered.
Exactly that. Some people genuinely need and prefer structure, clear direction. They can become quite unhappy, even anxious, if they feel they need more guidance or want that explicit nod from the boss confirming they did the task right. For someone who thrives on structure, being told, here's the objective, you figure out how to get there, that can be incredibly stressful, not motivating at all. It's a common management assumption, I think, that everyone wants freedom. But structure provides security for many people, and that's a motivator too.
Okay, that's one side of the risk. What's the other? The opposite problem.
The employee who perhaps gets a little too enthusiastic about making decisions.
Right. They get a taste of power and maybe overstep.
That's the danger of overreach, yes. Once you grant autonomy, some individuals might want to push the boundaries. They might want to make decisions that are really outside their job's scope, or maybe outside what the organizational structure allows, and that can lead straight to friction, conflict with their manager, or maybe with other teams. So the level of autonomy needs careful judgment. It has to align with the job, yes, but also with the employee's readiness, their experience, their maturity to handle those boundaries.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. We've looked at three big non-financial levers. Job rotation gives you variety, helps with cover, but can hurt efficiency and maybe team cohesion. Job enrichment offers deeper challenge and responsibility, which is great for growth, but it's costly, takes time, and is fundamentally limited by the nature of some jobs.
Right, the bin man problem.
Exactly. And finally, autonomy. Grants ownership and trust, lets people manage their own process, but it risks alienating those who need structure or empowering others too much.
A good summary of the core tensions.
So the main takeaway for you, listening, seems to be this. These methods are definitely powerful tools in the motivation toolkit, but none are magic bullets. Each one comes with its own built-in challenges, its own risks, whether that's training costs or the impossibility of enriching certain roles or the psychological impact of too much freedom. Getting it right always seems to be a balancing act. You're weighing the potential motivation gains against the very real management effort needed to handle those downsides, those inherent risks.
That captures it perfectly. The tension is always there in non-financial motivation. And maybe a final thought for you to consider. Think about those specific risks we discussed for each method, the efficiency loss, the practical limits, the need for tailored direction. Which of these three strategies do you think demands the most sophisticated managerial skill to pull off successfully? Without accidentally creating new problems, new sources of demotivation. It's about that blend of trust, training, structure, and individual tailoring.
Something to definitely mull over. Who has the toughest job drawing those lines? Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks to both of you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Business Gurus. Let's now hand it over to you. What further questions do you have based on what we've discussed so far? Leave a comment and we'll get back to you right away. If you haven't already, hit that follow for more business tips.